Hello and welcome to Become the Teapot. I'm Iain.
And so am I. And by the whirling winds of Watum, we are your hoary hosts.
Speak for yourself.
As always, we're traversing the astral plane betwixt film and comic books, and this episode, we're returning to the ever-expanding Marvel multiverse for some mystic mayhem with the Sorcerer Supreme. So, Iain, I know that you've seen this film before.
I have indeed.
Let's talk about it. What are your thoughts of Doctor Strange?
Doctor Strange. Well, I think it's rather good. You thought I was going to say strange.
That feels weird, but I'll allow it.
Sure.
Or you might not have.
I didn't think you were, because I don't think... It's a lot of things, this film, but it's not that strange.
Yeah, the little bits of strange adjacent pieces in there. I don't know. I actually really enjoy this film. It's one of my favourite MCU films.
Oh, right, okay. What is it about the film, then, for you, that puts it at the top of the Marvel tree?
Well, yeah, it's definitely near the top. I wouldn't say at the top. Obviously, this was like the first film that opened up the MCU to sorcery and sorcerers and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
They sort of touched or danced around it with Thor, but then that was kind of gods rather than magic.
Yeah, and especially in the early days of Thor, they really heavily lent into they're just aliens and we just don't understand their technology. And then they sort of eased off on that after a while and started introducing Fenrir and stuff like that.
But yeah, I quite enjoy the opening, actually. It's quite gory. Well, say gory is the wrong word. It's quite gruesome, I guess, the one in the library.
Yeah.
Even if you don't see any blood, it is some guy just having his head chopped off, which is quite gruesome for the MCU, or at least it was at the time when this came out, because it has moved on a bit since then.
Yeah, I know what you mean. And the car crash as well, some of the surgery scenes when Strange has got his hands in those mechanical vices with all the pins in his hands.
Yeah.
Scott Derrickson comes from a history of horror movies.
Okay.
So I think that shines through in those sequences, these sort of moments of gore and terror. I think that works to the film's strengths.
That's interesting, because that's not the first director or producer, I guess, that's come from horror films in the past. You know, we've got James Wan with Aquaman, this obviously, and then Sam Raimi, who did the Spider-Man. And then obviously he's back doing the sequel of this. So yeah, that's actually quite interesting. I didn't know that.
I think it's because horror tends to be a low budget medium. So it allows Marvel to, or superhero films in general, to recruit from this sort of self-taught and low income pool, as it were. So, they like to recruit, they don't tend to go for big famous directors. You know, Sam Raimi actually doing Multiverse of Madness is a bit of a strange one because... obviously, he's a very established director. But we'll speak about that another time, I'm sure, because obviously we are doing this episode. Multiverse of Madness is coming out about 2 weeks' time from point of recording this.
Yep. What did you think of Stephen with a PH, not a V, in this? What's his name? Old Cumberland sausage, Cumberbatch.
Benedict Cumberbatch, yeah.
That's
I
the one.
think he is... I think he plays the arrogance really well. And I like that they don't ever get rid of it entirely, and that's similar to the comic book that we'll be discussing later. Just because Stephen learned a lesson in humility when he had his hands crushed and all of this, he's still the same guy. He's just, his priorities have been refocused. So he is still quite an arrogant guy, even after the accident and everything else.
Yeah.
It just transitions from being an arrogant surgeon to an arrogant magician.
Sorcerer. Magician.
Sorcerer, yeah. Doing card tricks.
I think you do need... I think you do need to have some sort of arrogance when you are that good at something.
Yeah.
But the first time that we see him in surgery in the hospital, it does feel like an episode of Grey's Anatomy. Just like those people having fun and him saying the titles to those songs. I'm like, I wouldn't want my surgeon to do that. If I was having an operation and in my brain, I don't want them pissing around and trying to guess some songs. It does show how good he is, but also arrogant at the same time, which... I like the scene, but I'm saying I don't want to be the one on that table.
No, it's not a prominent role. Yeah, no, he plays it quite straight. Even when he does the comedy, he still plays it quite straight. And you can see that sort of classically trained history of acting coming through, even though what he's saying is ridiculously outlandish. And we see that in the Avengers and things like that going forward as well. So yeah, his American accent, he does that sort of Hugh Laurie American accent, which is generic, nondescript American. That's all you kind of think the film's a bit strange, but you can't quite put your finger on why. But it does the job.
Yeah, he does have... I mean, this is pretty much House being trained as a sorcerer. He's arrogant, he's top of his game, top of his league, if you will. So maybe he used House as the voice. I don't know.
It's a lot of similarities, and obviously House is based on Sherlock, and what is Cumberbatch's most famous role?
Doctor Strange.
Doctor Strange.
Oh. Dr. Sherlock.
That's the one.
Something that I really do love about this film is the Kirby-inspired CGI, especially when he's going through all the different worlds and the dimensions and whatever. It's literally like they've taken Kirby's art and just put it on the screen.
There's some really amazing stuff in here. The abstract design with some of those really trippy sequences. It's about as outlandish as I've seen in a sort of mainstream superhero film.
Yeah.
You know, it wouldn't be out of place at the end of 2001, A Space Odyssey or something like that. It's that sort of outlandish, abstract direction and some sort of freaky stuff, which it really, like you say, is very indicative of early Doctor Strange work. It's what sets Doctor Strange apart in his early days, is this really sort of quirky Ditko art style that was so strange and so outlandish and reminded everyone of a drugs trip, which a lot of this film does.
Yeah, pretty much. I don't want to take any assumptions, but I'm pretty sure Kirby must have done something in his youth to come up with all these art styles and all this artwork that he does. It is unbelievable, really.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know.
That's some on-the-air research.
It is. You know that he was drawn by Ditko, not Kirby.
Oh, Ditko. Well, potato.
Well, not at all, because Ditko was very, very right-wing, very straight-laced.
Fine.
Probably would never touch drugs in a million years and became a massive shut-in recluse in his later years. So, yeah, he was a big fan of Ayn Rand and things like that. So I don't think he did, which is the bizarre thing, is that his art style was so out there, but he as a person was so straight-laced. It was really juxtaposition of these two things.
Well, there you go. That's my fault for getting Kirby and Ditko confused.
Yeah, well, they were working around the same time, and between them and Stan Lee, sort of the big dream team at the time, making 90% of Marvel's current lineup.